So now that we've seen how to set up most things that we need to for a simple object for pixel art, now we're going to move into the main aspect of what we're going to do, and that's going to be making tile sets to actually create a game for a pixel art 2D platformer style game. So you can think of something like Mega Man or Mario. Well, to do this, we need to start more or less with what we had before, but we need to increase the size to allow for the pixel sets that we want to work with. Now, that said, in doing so, there are roughly 2 or 3 options. The first one is going to be if we're working with a 16-bit graphic design, so the really simplistic kind. There's also 32-bit and 64 bits. Now, in doing so, what we need to do is create essentially a 3x3 grid. So I'm going to go ahead and go with this one, which I've already set up to be this 48 by 48 and 16-bit color combination, because I'm making a 16-bit level tile set for this one. So with these numbers, I'm going to go ahead and just say create. Once again, I'll need to zoom in, and then from there, I need to do the last couple things. Well, first off, I need to go into my Edit, Preferences, Guides, Grids, and Slices, and right now I can't really see anything, so I'm actually going to come up here first and go View, Show, Grid, just so I can see them on here. But as you can see, we're missing quite a bit. Well, first off, I'm going to do this. I'm going to set grid lines every 16 pixels because I'm making a 16-bit, which will allow me to separate this number into the 3x3 grid. As far as the subdivisions go, well, I could do it by 2, 4, or any other number. Now, that said, I could go with a subdivision of, say, a 16 also, just so I can see every individual pixel. So, you know what, for now I'm actually going to do that. Grid line every 16, and those grids will be divided again into 16, so I got the smaller 1x1 pixels in the back there, but then I can also see how everything's going to be set out for the actual tile set as it is. So I'll say OK. Well, what do I want to do? The first question is, what kind of tile set do I want to have? Or in this case, what's the stage going to be? And I'm going to say this first one I'm going to do is going to be some kind of grassy stage itself. So I'm going to go ahead and start up here. But first, I'm going to go ahead and turn off my background for visibility. Actually, let me go and just create a new layer first. So new layer. And yeah, I'll just leave that as 1 for now. So because I got this second, or in this case layer 1 on here, I can turn off the background. Pretty simple. But I'm actually going to go ahead, come to this one, which is the background. And I'm going to give it a flat, simple color that isn't white, just so I have something to kind of work off of. Yep, that'll work. Okay, so just like before, I have my pencil usage over here. I have all my numbers set up here, so everything should be good. Now, before, we used a color palette off to the side, and for the most part, we're doing the same with this, but really, all we really have to do is... Yep, okay, all my stuff's good there, just wanted to check. What I need to do is to go ahead and change my color first, and I'll go to a green. Well, I'm just going to make a solid green across the top, just for my initial kind of starting bit. The other colors I'm going to need for this is going to be something a little bit more brown-ish to be kind of that dirt underneath, and I'll just drop some of that color into the middle here. Okay. So, with this, now that I have all of it here, I have what I need to continue. Well, this is how these tile sets work. There's the interior and exterior tiles. The interior is where it's going to be all kind of just this brown, simple, solid color in this area. And I'm going to go ahead and just use the paint bucket to fill that color in to this section. Now, in the rest of this is where things get a little bit more complicated. Well, I'm going to go back to my pencil, and let's talk about the grass. Well, how should the grass look? Well, there's a few things we can do. The first concept is going to be how detailed we can work with. Because I'm doing the 16-bit, I don't have a whole lot to work with, so I'm going to make this more of a jungle grass kind of canopy overhang style texture. Well, first off, I need to go ahead and switch back to that green, and I'm going to go ahead and just add a second row. There we go. Add the second row to the middle here. Well, what I can do is essentially taking this color, I can come out and just kind of add some of these little overhang looking things kind of like this. Essentially just kind of this vine hanging down. And then under that, I'll have the dirt. Now, I'm just kind of free-handed, quickly dropping this in. But I'm also going to just zoom in, just to make it a little bit easier for me. Now, you'll note I'm still staying inside this overall square. And that's because this one square, this one section of this 3x3 grid, is where everything is supposed to line up and connect. Well, I'll go ahead and grab my green, and I can add just a little bit more in here. And just kind of go back and forth with these colors, just to kind of add in this kind of more leafy, changing distance on here. Now, this is where the next big part of this comes into play. This tile set needs to connect and work on both its left and right with each other in the same block, as well as with the blocks to the sides. So now that I have this, I need to go ahead and do a couple more things. Well, I'm going to start branching over into these others. That said, this here, this is coming down 1, 2, 3 from that 2-layer grass that I did across the top. So if I connected, or at least combined these two things side by side, it would be essentially adding in one more row to the side that would look like this to continue on. So I have to make sure that this is what I want. And I'm going to go ahead and drop it back one more there, and extend this down one more there. Why am I doing it this way? Well, just so I don't have too much exactly the same and there's at least a little variation. But I need to continue this for these next two. Over here, this one is going to be a right drop-off. So we've played games like Mario, Mega Man, and all of that. Well, that said, what I have here shouldn't exactly be just a simple end like this. It's going to need to kind of have this drop-off effect. So I'm going to use this erasing tool, and I'm going to hide that just so we can see a little bit easier. And I'm going to do this 3x3 here just for this drop-off ledge. So when I go back to my pencil, I can basically bring it down like this, so I got this nice little overhang from the dirt or whatever else it is I'm going to have on my side over there. Okay, and then I can come in and start filling things into this block. And I'll go and just fill that in. So when I zoom out, I can see this far easier. And I can see that this dirt, this kind of rounded off edge here, is allowing me quite a bit of finessing wiggle room to account for whatever it is I have going on. Okay, not bad. Well, if I have it like this over here, the other side should be roughly the same. So I need to go ahead and do roughly the same on the other side. So I'll grab green, bring it across, start doing some of the same little overhang leaf spacing stuff, just like I had the other side. And I'll just go ahead and zoom in up into it, grab my dirt color, and start filling in this square. Now, we used on the other side this edge of blank transparency, so I'm going to do the same over here. But just because I have everything enclosed at the moment, fill it in with the dirt. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Actually, I did 4, but that's fine because this entire column here will be empty. And let it kind of fall off the side there. Now, one other thing we can do here, just to help us with all of this, is I'm going to go Window, Arrange, New Window. I'm going to take this, drop it down, and use this window just to kind of help me see and make sure everything is lining up and is looking the way I want it to look. So I'm actually going to turn on the background, but I'm going to make this background color a nice simple kind of sky blue. Yeah, that'll work. So this will help me kind of keep track and see how everything really is going to look. That said, I could take all of these down one row. So I'll lock the background layer here, go back to layer 1, do a quick grab of stuff, and I'm going to move it down one row. Oop, did I misclick? Oh well. You know what? I'm going to do it this way instead. I'm going to take my erase tool and take off that top row. Take off just a little bit here and there. Okay, that works. Just to make things a little bit easier to see, I'm going to click into this window, View, and with that one, I'm going to turn off the grid just so I can see this a little bit easier. Okay, so that works, and I get a good look at everything on there. So I can continue this and do the work all the way down on the sides, which the sides, for the most part, are going to be much like this, but it's going to kind of keep this same hanging off edge. So I'm going to go ahead and do that for the two sides quick. Following this edge down, goes there. Paint bucket, fill that in. Back to the pencil, cover that up because that shouldn't have been there. And just kind of fill in those spots. Okay, well that brings us to this bottom outer edge. Well, the bottom outer edge is going to be more or less the flip side of what we had up there. So I'm going to go ahead and come down about like this, come across, bring this down, paint can, fill it in, and go ahead and use the erase to take away this row that I got by accident. So with this, as you can kind of see here, we have all this overhang and stuff just over here. Okay. Well, down here, across this bottom edge, I need to do kind of this same grass thing, but it's going to be hanging downwards instead. So, grab my pencil, hit that dropper just because I can see it up there, and I'm going to do kind of the same thing, but just kind of hit some of this grassy, overhang, viney look on stuff. Okay. Pretty good overall. Now, just because it's supposed to be a little bit more organic, I can kind of come up and bring in just some, some of these spots where it's kind of growing up into the dirt. How should this look? Well, it's completely up to you, but I will say you do want this to be fairly random in terms of basic appearance. If it's too uniform, it's not going to go well. The biggest thing to remember is that the middle square will more than likely be placed next to itself as opposed to the ones at the other ends. But I can kind of make something like this, which gives me this overall decent look for this square. I got these nice overhangs, but I can still do far more than this because I need so much more detail. So let's look at doing some of this. Well, I'm going to go with the basic green part first, and just kind of over here on the edge, I'm going to make some things that kind of look like this, just some zigzags back and forth, to more or less kind of be my vines hanging off the edge. And I'll do the same over here and just kind of get that on there. If I don't like something, obviously I can go and change it, fix a couple things, but just so I kind of have something along that edge. So let's talk about detail. So I have this green. Well, if this is overhang, then chances are there's going to be, some shadows in here too. So I'm going to zoom in and kind of just a block or two underneath each of these. Just add in some dark green just to kind of help that emphasis of this is a canopy overhang. So there's going to be some other colors mixed in. And even though I'm this close in here doing all of this, I can still take a look over here at my overall view and see how this color, just this little bit of extra in here, is adding so much more detail to this entire scene. Because now anywhere that it's darker gives the illusion that there's actual depth, shadow, and detail, when it's really just a simple color combination helping emphasize what isn't actually there. So I'll go through, just do some of this, hit some of these spots. And this is probably a little too much here, so I'm going to go ahead and just brown out some of that. Grab that dark green. Hit some of these internal spots. And when I get down here, I'll do kind of what I did before, but do the opposite. Essentially, my goal down here is that anywhere I kind of have these extra vines hanging off, the bottom edge should theoretically kind of have a little bit of shadow to it. Not necessarily that every bit needs to be like this, but just that there is some shadow inside of these spots. And even up above a little bit in some of these kind of internal missing spots, we can throw in just a little bit just to kind of help emphasize that shadow that, once again, isn't really there, but we're pretending it is just by using these other color palettes. So, I added that on there, and as we can see from our demo up here, we got a lot of detail. Okay, well, we can keep adding and doing more to this with the grass. Well, if it's going to be up there, I'm probably going to have a little bit of lighter grass up here towards the top, kind of just filling in where the light, theoretically, would be hitting it. And I don't need too much, and working with this at 16-bit, we can't add too much detail, but we can add quite a bit just with these little bits of detail. Now, this is probably just a little too yellow for what I'm going for, but I can fill in some of these spots, especially where I can transition from light into the darker shadow, or vice versa, just getting a nice possible gradient up here. But that said, there really should be some color change. And what I mean by that is, if we have light here, if this is the bright coloration for the grass, it shouldn't be next to the shadow, theoretically. I mean, it can be, but it's definitely one of those, you're going to have to take it by a case-by-case basis and just play with it and see what you can actually accomplish and how things look. So I'm going to continue moving around here and adding more in, and when we come back we'll see where we are so far. So I added in all the light green for where the sun would theoretically be hitting the grass, but I can keep taking this further and further. So I can grab the dark green, darken it up some more, and add in one more layer of shadow in here if it's something I felt I really needed. Well, taking a look on here at my simple example, adding in this last color of shadow really does do a lot to help emphasize the different layers and depth. So I'm going to go ahead and add just this darker layer underneath a few of these different spots, especially over here on this little overhang, because I like the way that looks. But anywhere that it's kind of dropping down, I'm going to just kind of come in and add this. And I can see over here on my extra window kind of how it looks and where I'm kind of missing some of these little details. So using this to kind of help me out to figure where I need to put some of these things, I'm going to go ahead and continue around and see where we end up just as I add this next layer of shadow into this scene. So I added in all the last bit of real dark shadowed grass, and it came out looking pretty good, as I can see up here into my overall preview. So just as we did all of this for the grass, we need to go ahead and also see what we can do by working with the actual dirt now instead. Well, the dirt has a few things in it that make it a little bit more unique. Well, the first thing is I'm going to go ahead and kind of go to more of a brown color set in here, kind of hit this darker color, and here in the very middle, which I'll go ahead and do this just to highlight this square. In here is where everything's going to line up. Okay. So what I'm going to do is this. I can kind of come in here and make these kind of archy shapes. And this is going to be kind of my dirt slash other. I'm going to go ahead and come in here and make that a little bit smaller. I can kind of see it over here too, but the main idea is that I want this to be the same roughly on both sides. So when these pieces connect, it'll look about right. So what I do to one side, I need to do to the other. Now, that said, with the shape I have here, this is roughly how it will look when it connects to each other, from this piece to this piece. So I may decide I don't like just how big that is, so I'm going to narrow it down over here. And if I build that same shape over here, this little circle is going to be far nicer than what I have there. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and continue on with doing this kind of thing. Well, what's here at the bottom? We'll probably need to connect up here at the top. So if this piece has something here, and if this is going to be a bigger brick, rock, whatever it's going to be, I'm going to have something roughly about the same there. So at this point, I just need to kind of come in here and fill in these different colored sections according to what I really want to be there. Okay. Well, it's a little hard to see on here, but I can still pretty easily see my grid. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and fill in just a little bit more of these sections. So if that's going to connect there, I'll go ahead, grab this, fill some things in there. Well, if it connects there, I'll need to come around here and do the same thing. And really, it just kind of amounts to filling in these spots to account for all the different variations and combinations of what should line up from and to where. So I'm going to go ahead and fill in this first round of colors to kind of put in these rocks / variations. And when we come back, we'll see how we are looking.